Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're well. Today we're going to continue with our normal Wednesday poetry, prose and riddles stream. Last week, I believe we finished on the poem When to the Sessions by William Shakespeare. So as always, we will begin the stream by rereading the poem we finished on last week, and then moving on to poems we haven't seen yet, which we will analyse in more detail. So, When to the Sessions, which if I recall correctly I was hypothesising must be sonnet 30 because of the Roman numerals. Because if we go back up, we see that this... actually it's not clear, is it? This sonnet may be just the title of this particular poem. In fact, it probably is. But yes, that's my guess. I'm guessing that each of Shakespeare's sonnets are numbered and that When to the Sessions is 30. Anyway, When to the Sessions. When to the sessions of sweet silent thought, I summon up remembrance of things past. I sigh the lack of many a thing I sought, and with old woes new wail my dear time's waste. Then can I drown an eye unused to flow for precious friends hid in death's dateless night, and weep afresh love's long since cancelled woe, and moan the expense of many a vanished sight. Then can I grieve at grievances forgone, and heavily from woe to woe tell o'er the sad account of fore bemoaned moan, which I knew pay as if not paid before. But if the while I think on thee, dear friend, all losses are restored and sorrows end. Which is a lovely little piece. Just thinking, I'm probably mispronouncing this word here, because I believe the omission of a consonant and the use of an apostrophe is to try and turn what would otherwise be... I believe it's an attempt to concatenate syllables. So, presumably that would be over, but he's trying to turn it into one syllable. But o'er, still to my ear, sounds like two. O'er, perhaps. Not sure. Anyway, that was When to the Sessions, which we looked at last week. So, on to For Many a Glorious Morning. For many a glorious morning have I seen flutter the mountain tops with sovereign eye, kissing with golden face the meadows green, gilding pale streams with heavenly alchemy. Anon permit the basest clouds to ride with ugly rack on his celestial face, and from the forlorn world his visage hide, stealing unseen to west with this disgrace. Even so my sun one early morn did shine, with all triumphant splendour on my brow, but out, alack! He was but 1 hour mine, the raging cloud hath masked him from me now. Yet him for this my love no whit disdaineth. Sons of the world may stain when heaven's sun staineth. Interesting. I'm not sure I followed all of that on the first reading, to be honest. So let's begin by looking for any words we need to look up. Rack, with ugly rack on his celestial face. Well, let's look at, before then, let's look at what's actually the meaning of this poem up to that point, because it's interesting. So first of all, we have enjambment here. The line keeps going. So, in terms of meaning, it should be, for many a glorious morning have I seen flatter the mountain tops with sovereign eye. Now, seems to me that I may be missing something. That doesn't seem fully grammatically correct to me. But I think it's because the object of the sentence has been omitted. I think that the object of the poem is, or I think the subject of the poem is the sun, and I think that the sun is the object of that sentence, but it's been omitted. I think in full it's trying to say, for many a glorious morning have I seen the sun flatter the mountain tops with sovereign eye. Then we go to kissing with golden face the meadows green, then gilding pale streams with heavenly alchemy. And that obviously creates one... through the use of the semicolon, we can tell that this is creating one... what's the word? Sorry. Oh, the word's eluding me. It's creating one coherent thought. The first 4 verses all express one coherent thought. Then we have, anon permit the basest cloud to ride with ugly rack on his celestial face. Now that seems to be describing clouds passing by the sun. But I'm not sure what they mean by ugly rack. So, let's have a quick look, shall we? I'm familiar with expressions like rack and ruin, and I've got a... Oops, that's Wikipedia, not Wiktionary. And I've got a feeling that rack may have to do with pain, but let's see. We certainly don't mean it in the shelf sense. And I don't think it's referring to the torture device. Hold on. With ugly rack. So that is being used as a noun, isn't it? Oh, to stretch a person's joints, that's presumably where the use of the rack to refer to the torture device comes from. So it can mean to drive, move, go forwards rapidly, stir, to fly as vapour or broken clouds. That seems likely, but this is a verb. Thin, flying, broken clouds, or any portion of floating paper in the sky. Wreck, destruction. That was the other usage that I was thinking of. But I don't think that's the usage here. So presumably, rack in this sense is thin, flying, broken clouds or any portion of floating vapour in the sky. Okay, so anon permit the basest clouds to ride with ugly rack on a celestial face. Oh, incidentally, anon means soon. In the very near future. I mentioned that because it's somewhat archaic nowadays. So soon permit the basest, so the lowliest clouds to ride with ugly rack on his celestial face. So I wonder if the sense of thin, flying, broken... I wonder if the idea of being thin clouds could come from the idea of being stretched out, the same as stretching out the joints. I wonder if that could have a shared etymology. Anyway, and from the forlorn world his visage hides, stealing unseen to the west with this disgrace. So again, this seems to be 4 verses forming one coherent thought. In this case, the imagery of clouds going in front of the sun and it being described as a disgrace, as a sad event. Even so, my sun one early morn did shine with all triumphant splendour on my brow, but out, alack. Okay, that's one we need to look up. Incidentally, if there's any other words that people would like looked up that I'm not picking out, by all means, post about it in chat, and I will attend to that as soon as possible. So, alack, an expression of sorrow or mourning. But out alack, he was but 1 hour mine. The region could hath masked him from me now. Oh, sorry, the region cloud hath masked him from me now. So again, 4 verses creating one coherent thought. So essentially this is... This is recreating the image of the sun coming out and then being hidden by clouds, but this time with the added information that it was shining on his brow. That is the speaker's brow, and particularly notable is the reference to it being my son. Yeah, him for this my love no wit disdaineth. What do they mean by wit? I'm familiar with W-I-T, wit, as in witty. The smallest part of particle imaginable, an iota. Yes, I'm not quite following that last little bit. Yet for him, for this my love no wit disdaineth. So I think that's essentially saying, yet my love for him no wit disdaineth. I assume disdaineth just means to disdain, as in to be scornful of. Yes, a feeling of contempt or scorn. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything else. And staineth, I would assume, means to stain. Yes, yet for him, for this my love no wit disdaineth. Sons of the world may stain when heaven's sun staineth. Yeah, that last little bit I'm not following. I will quickly look up wit in my physical dictionary on the off chance it has some additional meaning or context which clarifies this. Oops. There we go. Wit, particle least possible amount. Wit. That was one usage. There's another one here. Wit. Sun. Sunday. Oh, Wit Sunday. 7th Sunday after Easter. Commemorating day of the Pentecost. Wit Monday, Tuesday, those following. Da, da, da. Literally White Sunday. Okay. Because we saw that there was the it could also mean white down here, didn't we? Yet for him, for this my love, no white disdaineth. I'm conjecturing whether that could be what it means. Sons of the world may stain when heaven's sun staineth. No, I don't follow it. Let's look it up. Being Shakespeare, I'd be a little surprised if no, Wiktionary doesn't seem to have it. Oh, is that it? Yep, it has it. So we've got quatrain 1, 2 and 3 and then the couple at the end. So, what does Wikipedia have to say about the couplet at the end? According to Colin Barrow, the context implies that the speaker must allow others to dim their brightness, that he may allow for faults in his friend. The innocent weather that clouds the sun at the start of the poem is turned into moral stain, in which the sun itself, and by implication the friend, plays its part. Only when the end of the line is reached does it become apparent that the poet's comparison of his friend as my son has become a pun and slur, describing as a son of the world, a morally corrupt worldling, not a divine being. The friend's stain also stains the speaker and injures him irreversibly. Hammond considers the pun on sun and stain to be a superficial wit. The final line, excuse for the friend's crime, Hammond refers to the excuse as lame, were it not for the metaphorical dress. The couplet offers resistance to the reader. The reader wants something like, I fought out love an everlasting day, and yet my trust thou didst my love betray. These lines fit the spirit of the poem. Reading the sonnet with the couplet that Shakespeare wrote leaves the reader uncomfortable. Heather Dubrow claims the speaker is trying to fool himself. He accepts one moral from the metaphor, and that the friend's betrayal is justified by the sun, and neglects a moral the reader has been observing. The friend, like the sun, has been deceptive. Certainly sounds like there's a lot more going on here than I'd picked up upon. Yet him for this my love no wit disdaineth. Oh, so I think that may be the betrayal. That he doesn't disdain my love a little, he disdains it a lot. Sons of the world may stain when heaven's sun staineth, but that's okay because sons of the world, that is morally corrupt people, may stain, may commit crimes when the sun in the sky stains, that is, has clouds pass by. I think that's what it's saying then, based on what we've just read on Wikipedia. So I have actually gone through the analysis of its meaning now as well. But I felt that was somewhat necessary to properly tackle whether there were any words we didn't understand, because it felt like the usage of some of the words was contrary to what I expected. Anyway, rhythm and rhyme. I'm fairly certain this is all going to be iambic pentameter. But let's see. the first line seems to be hexameter. Full many a glorious morning have I seen is 12 syllables. Certainly seems consistent with I ams to me though. Afterwards we get a bunch of pentameter, although some of it has feminine endings. And how does it end? And it ends on hexameter. Interesting. So it begins and ends on hexameter, but the rest of it appears to be pentameter? It certainly seems more varied than I recall the Shakespeare we looked at last week as being. What does Wikipedia have to say about its structure? Sonnet 33 is a typical English or Shakespearean sonnet composed of 3 quatrains followed by a final couplet. Its rhyme scheme A B C D C D E F E F G G is typical for the form. Like other Shakespearean sonnets, it's written in iambic pentameter, a type of poetic meter based on 5 pairs of metrically weak strong positions. A regular example is anon permit the basest clouds to ride. The lines of the couplet have a final extrametrical. The lines of the couplet have a final extrametrical syllable or feminine ending. Lines 2, 3, 4, 8, and 14 all begin with an initial reversal. So by that they mean a trochaic substitution. But then that implies that the first line isn't hexameter. And it implies that this isn't I picked up on the feminine ending on disdaineth, but this one seemed like it had one more syllable, making it a hexameter, and that doesn't explain the first verse. So hold on, let's look again. Full many a glorious. Let me try that again. Full many a glorious morning have, that's up to 10, I seen. Yeah, I don't understand that. That's 12 syllables, so it'd have to be a hexameter, not a pentameter. And yet they don't mention that at all. And what do we have here? Sons of the world 4 may stain when heaven's sun, now we're up to 10, staineth. That's 12. Okay, I find that deeply confusing. Yeah, I can't reconcile that. I don't know what to say, it just doesn't. It just doesn't add up. And there's nowhere there I could readily readily drop a syllable either. No, there's not. So I don't know. That's very strange. Oh, they do give an example here. Okay, sons of the world may stain, so far I agree, when heavens. So they think heavens is one syllable. Heavens. Why would heavens be one syllable? I mean, I can understand that possibly the V isn't properly pronounced, but if you're gonna pronounce it heaven, spoken quite quickly, even then you'd have a break. The V would surely become something akin to a glottal stop. Heavens. 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 I suppose you can sort of do it. Heavens. Yeah, if you slur the V, you can sort of do it. Okay, so that's the difference then. What about full many a glorious morning have I seen. Full many a glorious morning have I seen. I don't know, are they gonna suggest that glorious is in fact one syllable as well? Glorious? Glorious? Anyway, I think that's enough of that. So what I can say is I don't fully understand what's going on here. It sounds like they're doing quite a lot of slurring to make the words fit. Now, in fairness to Shakespeare, it may well be that that's just the way the words were pronounced in his time, as opposed to him having a wrenching the words himself to make it work. Anyway, so yeah, it is notionally iambic pentameter, and it's a Shakespearean sonnet, as they quite rightly point out, as this is in fact not only has it the form of a Shakespearean sonnet, it is a sonnet written by Shakespeare, so that's hardly surprising. So we've discussed the meaning, we've looked at any words we didn't know, we've looked at the rhythm and the rhyme. Wikipedia mentioned the rhyme actually. As it said, A B A B, C D C D, E F E F, G G, which is what we'd expect. So I think that's everything. If there's anything anyone else would like discussed, about that particular poem, let me know, and we'll do so. What I think I'll do is, since I have every reason to believe that the remainder of these sonnets by Shakespeare are going to have a very similar structure, I may go through them a good deal more quickly than I usually do, with less analysis, because I don't think there's much original that I'll be able to say, that I'll be able to add to what I've already said, that is. So, going a bit quicker now. Like as the waves, Like as the waves make towards the pebbled shore, so do our minutes hasten to their end, each changing place with that which goes before. In sequent toil all forwards do contend, nativity once in the main of light, crawls to maturity wherewith being crowned, crooked eclipses gainst his glory fight, and time that gave doth now his gift confound. Time doth transfix the flourish set on youth, and delves the parallels into beauty's brow. Feeds on the rarities of nature's truth, and nothing stands but for his scythe to mow. And yet to times in hope my verse shall stand, praising thy worths, despite his cruel hand. That was a very nice one, wasn't it? A bit of a reflection on the nature of time, but also mixed in with these themes of youth, and in this case, youth lost. I don't think I saw anything there that I found, any words I saw there that I found particularly difficult to understand. I assume and delves the parallels in beauty's brow is probably referring to wrinkles on one's brow. I could be wrong. Okay, so I'll move on to a final reading. Since as I say, I don't think there's much more to say. Yeah, it looks like iambic pentameter to me. And we have the regular rhyming scheme we'd expect. So yeah, the final reading. Like as the waves make towards the pebbled shore, so do our minutes hasten to their end, each changing place with that which goes before. In sequent toil all forwards do contend. Nativity, once in the main of light, crawls to maturity wherewith being crowned, crooked eclipses gainst his glory fight. And time that gave doth now his gift confound. Time doth transfix the flourish set on youth, and delves the parallels in beauty's brow. Feeds on the rarities of nature's truth, and nothing stands but his scythe to mow. And yet to times in hope my verse shall stand, praising thy worth, despite his cruel hand. So, tired with all these, for restful death I cry, as to behold desert a beggar born, and needing nothing trimmed in jollity, and purest faith unhappily forsworn, and gilded honour shamefully misplaced, and maiden virtue rudely strumpeted, and right perfection wrongfully disgraced, and strength by limping sway disabled, and art made tongue-tied by authority, and folly doctor-like controlling skill, and simple truth miscalced simplicity, miscalled simplicity, the captive good attending captain ill. Tired with all these, from these would I be gone, save that to die I leave my love alone. Cry and jollity don't seem to rhyme, but otherwise we seem to have the regular rhyming scheme we were expecting. As for the meaning, that's a bit more complex. So, tired with all these, for restful death I cry. Well, that seems to be the central thesis of this poem. As to behold desert, a beggar born. As to behold desert, a beggar born. Does he just mean to have nothing? Born without anything? Or does it mean desert in the just desert sense? To behold a desert, a beggar born. Probably the first one, and needing nothing trimmed in jollity. and purest faith unhappily forsworn. Oh, so obviously it's a list of things he's tired of. To behold desert, a beggar born. So to behold, presumably someone born with nothing. Thus they are destined to become a beggar. I assume that's what it means. To behold the needy, nothing trimmed in jollity. Trimmed as in having on the outside of your garments, like gold trim. So, needy, nothing trimmed in jollity. So someone that needs things so badly that there's not even a trim of jollity. There's not even, on the fringes a sense of joy. That makes sense. Purest faith, unhappily forsworn. So giving up on the purest of faith, and apparently, unhappily so. Gilded honour, shamefully misplaced. So, I can't be sure. I wonder if that is a reference to trusting. Tracing your, I wonder if that could be a reference to staying steadfastly by something or trusting something which it transpires one shouldn't. Gilded honour shamefully misplaced. Because obviously we could describe actions as honourable, but I wonder if this is more honour in the social sense. Or perhaps it could be a reference to a hypocrite, someone who... No, what it probably is doing someone an honour. So, giving honour to someone that doesn't deserve it. That'll be what it means, I expect. Maiden virtue rudely strumpeted. Well, I know that a strumpet would be a loose woman. So I wonder if... okay, yeah. Indeed, it refers to prostitution. As I suspected, but wanted to double check anyway. And right perfection, wrongfully disgraced. Seems self-explanatory. Strength by limping sway disabled. Limping sway? I'm not sure what that's a reference to. I mean, I've caught onto the theme of a good thing which in some way has been wronged or curtailed or undermined. But I'm not sure what he's referring to by a limping sway that could disable strength. Still, art made tongue-tied by authority. Yes, as a playwright in his day, I can well imagine what he's getting at there. Folly, doctor-like, controlling skill. Doctor-like, interesting. I wonder specifically what he had in mind with that analogy. Simple truth, miscalled simplicity. Yes, isn't that a very poignant remark even today? And captive good attending captain ill. Tired with all these, from these would I be gone, save that to die I leave my love alone. Quite a touching poem, really. I had to stop and think about it to fully comprehend it, but very nice one. As before, it appears to be a Shakespearean sonnet, so not much point going into any detail about its structure, as we've already looked at quite a few of those. So I'll head on to the final reading, and then we'll go on to the next one. Tired with all these, for restful death I cry, and to behold desert a beggar born. Sorry, let me start again. Tired with all these, for restful death I cry, as to behold desert a beggar born, and needing nothing trimmed in jollity, and purest faith unhappily forsworn, and gilded honour shamefully misplaced, and maiden virtue rudely strumpeted, and right perfection wrongfully disgraced, and strength by limping sway disabled, and art made tongue-tied by authority, and folly doctor-like controlling skill, and simple truth miscalled simplicity, and captive good attending captain ill. And tired of all these, from these would I be gone, save that to die I leave my love alone. So, no longer mourn. No longer mourn for me when I am dead. Then you shall hear the surly sullen bell give warning to the world that I am fled from this vile world with vilest worms to dwell. Nay, if you read this line, remember not the hand that writ it, for I love you so, that I in your sweet thoughts would be forgot, if thinking on me then should make you woe. Oh, if, I say, you look upon this verse, when I perhaps compounded am with clay, do not so much as my poor name rehearse, but let your love even with my life decay, lest the wise world should look into your moan, and mock you with me after I am gone. Quite a powerful piece. Still, I have nothing much to add to it. I think that this was a very readily comprehended sonnet, and it follows the same structure. So on to the next one, the time of year. That time of year thou mayest in me behold, when yellow leaves or none or few do hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold, their ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such day, and after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away death's second self that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed whereon it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. This thou perceiveth, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well which thou must leave ere long. Again, quite a beautiful piece. Another contemplation of the nature of life and time, life and death, and youth lost. Still, not much I can add. So, moving on, but be contented. But be contented when that fell arrest without all bale shall carry me away. My life hath in this line some interest, which from memorial still with thee shall stay. When thou reviewest this, thou doth review the very part was consecrate to thee. The earth can have but earth, which is his due. My spirit is thine, the better part of me. So then thou hast but lost the dregs of life, the prey of worms, my body being dead, the coward conquest of a wretched knife. Too base of thee to be remembered, the worth of that is that which it contains, and that is this, and this with thee remains. That one was slightly harder to follow. But be contented when that fell arrest without all bale shall carry me away. So, be contented when I die, I think that's saying. My life hath in this line some interest, which for memorial still with thee shall stay. So my life has a connection with this poem, which will stay with you as a memorial. When thou reviewest this, thou dost review the very part was consecrate to thee. Okay. So, by consecrate to thee, I assume it means the thing that was to you sacred. The earth can have but earth, which is his due. My spirit is thine, the better part of me. Okay, this is making a lot more sense. So, the earth only takes my body, but with you, my soul remains. So then thou hast but lost the dregs of life. The prey of worms, my body being dead. The coward conquest of a wretch's knife, too base of thee to be remembered. So, what does he mean by the coward conquest of a wretch's knife? I wonder if it is a reference to being stabbed to death, but that seems oddly specific, since the poem seems to be written in the first person. The worth of that is that which it contains, and that is this, and this with thee remains. So this too, I think, is a very touching piece. I still find these two verses a little confusing. I'm not sure if I have understood them correctly or not, but the rest of it is sweet. So, when in the chronicle of wasted time, I see descriptions of the fairest wights, and beauty making beautiful old rhyme, in praise of ladies dead and lovely knights. Then, in the blazon of sweet beauty's best, of hand, of foot, of lip, of eye, of brow, I see their antique pen would have expressed even such a beauty as you master now. So all their praises are but prophecies of this our time, all you prefiguring. And for they look but with divining eyes, they had not skill enough your worth to sing. For we which now behold these present days have eyes to wonder, but lack tongues to praise. That is both a beautiful piece and also very interesting, since it's retrospective. It's obviously Shakespeare making a remark that the poetry of the past was, and possibly prose, it's not specific, was much more beautiful than today, and that in the past they were able to far more masterly express the beauty of things, of people, which they can't do so well now. Obviously, you also have the overarching theme of the praise of the object of this poem. But it's very interesting, since for the last few hundred years Shakespeare has been regarded as one of the greatest masters of the English language, that he himself would then be referring to even older pieces as being much more skillfully composed than we can do today, where today is in the 1600s when he was writing. I'm trying to think, he might have been active in the... How old was he? He may have been active in the very late part of the 1500s. Yeah, he would have been. So, look, 1564 to 1616. Anyway, again, beautiful piece. I don't really have much to add, especially as its structure seems to be that of a Shakespearean sonnet, which we've already looked at quite a lot. Is that definitely true? Yeah. So, let me not to the marriage. Let me not to the marriage. Interesting. Let me not to the marriage of true minds. Admit impediments, love is not love, which alters when its alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an even fixed mark, that looks on tempests and it never shaken, and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fall, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. So where it says, love is not love, which alters when alteration finds, it's referring to aging. And where he says, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments, he's suggesting that true love is a marriage of minds, not of physical attraction. And therefore it is ageless. Again, a very nice piece. I wonder what he means, or bends with the remover to remove. Does he mean, is it a reference to death, that when the remover, that is death, removes someone, love isn't removed? That would be my best guess. Interesting structure as well, with the caesura and the enjambment. It's interesting that as early as this, poetry had already reached this degree of modernity. Anyway, is this following the proper sonnet structure? I think it is. Yeah, seems to be. But now we move on to some of Shakespeare's work, which is presumably not sonnets. So, Song from the Tempest. Full fathom, 5 thy father lies, of his bones are coral made, those are pearls that were his eyes, nothing of him that doth fade, but doth suffer a sea change, into something rich and strange, sea nymphs hourly ring his knell, ding dong, hark, now I hear them, ding dong bell. So we've got A, B, C, C. And then we've got a D, D there. And I don't think dong or them rhyme with anything. I'm not sure what structure this is. Quite a lot of this looks like iambic tetrameter, but not all of it. Nothing of him that doth fade. Hold on. This does seem like a familiar structure. This is alternating tetrameter and trimeter, aren't they? Isn't it? Sorry. Do I mean trimeter? I probably mean trimeter. Yeah, but the structure seems to fall apart a bit after nothing of him that doth fade. Very quickly. What is the name of the structure I was thinking it might be? The ballad. It does refer to it as a song, so I can't be sure, but this might be some variation on a ballad. As for its meaning, it seems to be specific to the story of the Tempest. It seems to be referring to an individual who, I would guess, died at sea, and whoever the speaker is referring to what has become of them. So I'll give it one more reading, and then we'll move on. For fathom 5 thy father lies, of his bones are coral made. Those are pearls that were his eyes, nothing of him that doth fade, but doth suffer a sea change into something rich and strange. Sea nymphs hourly ring his knell. Ding dong, hark, now I hear them, ding dong, bell. Sung from Measure for Measure. Take, oh take those lips away, that so sweetly were forsworn, and those eyes the break of day, lights that do mislead the morn. But my kisses bring again, seals of love, but sealed in vain, sealed in vain. This is interesting. This appears to be some form of trochaic poetry, specifically trochaic tetrameter, which has been docked its final syllable to make it masculine. But not consistently, only the first 4 verses, I think. Then the yeah, and after that it goes to some form of pentameter. It's odd, because seals of love, I think it's obvious that seals and love should be emphasised, but sealed in vain. Again, sealed and vain. Those should be emphasised. So this up to now looks trochaic. Then you've got sealed in vain again, without anything in between. Strange. I have no idea what that structure is. Nor am I entirely sure of the meaning. Take, oh take those lips away that so sweetly were forsworn, and those eyes that break of day, lights that do mislead the morn. But my kisses bring again, seals of love, but sealed in vain, sealed in vain. Not sure, I suspect it's probably... It would probably help if I knew the context of that particular play, assuming it's a play. But it certainly seems to be referring to an individual that is described as beautiful. And it seems to be urging them to remove their attentions. But exactly why, I'm not sure. Song from Much Ado About Nothing. Sigh no more, ladies, sigh no more. Men were deceivers ever, one foot in sea and one on shore, to one thing constant never. Then sigh not so, but let them go, and be you blithe and bony, converting all your sounds of woe into hey nonny nonny. Sing no more ditties, sing no mo, of dump so dull and heavy. The fraud of men was ever so, since summer first was levy. Then sigh not so, but let them go, and be you blithe and bonny, converting all your sounds of woe into hey nonny nonny. Interesting. I think it's a ballad. And I think it's iambic. What did blithe mean again? Casually careless or indifferent, showing a lack of concern. Yes, it just seems to be a general warning to women to be, to not trust in men for their happiness. Make of that what you will. So, I'll read it once more. Sigh no more, ladies, sigh no more. Men were deceivers ever, one foot in sea and one on shore, to one thing constant never. Then sigh not so, but let them go, and be you blithe and bonny, converting all your sounds of woe into hey nonny nonny. Sing no more ditties, sing no mo, of dump so dull and heavy. The fraud of men was ever so, since summer first was levy. And sigh not so, but let them go, and be you blithe and bonny, converting all your sounds of woe into hey nonny nonny. And the final piece we have from Shakespeare is Song from Cymbeline. Fear no more the heat of the sun, nor the furious winter's rages. Thou thy worldly task have done, home art gone, and ta'en thy wages. Golden lads and girls almost, as chimney sweepers come to dust. Fear no more the frown o' the grey, thou art past the tyrant's stroke. Care no more to cloth and eat, to thee the reed is as the oak. The sceptre learning psychic physic must, or follow this and come to dust. Fear no more the lightning flash, nor the all-dreaded thunderstone. Fear not slander, censure rash. Thou hast finished joy and moan. All lovers young, all lovers must consign to thee and come to dust. No exorciser harm thee, nor no witchcraft charm thee. Ghost unlaid forbear thee. Nothing ill come near thee. Quiet consummation have, and renowned be thy grave. Strange. As far as I can discern, this seems to be urging someone who's just died not to be afraid of anything since they are no more. Again, I don't know the context. I'm noticing quite a few trimeters and tetrameters, but I can't detect a distinct pattern. And a lot of this seems like it would fit trochees more than iams. For example, care no more to cloth and eat. Surely that's trochaic. But then you have lines like, as chimney sweepers come to dust. You'd think that would be iambic. So yes, I have no clue about the structure. It seems all over the place to me. Still. Let me give it one final reading. Then we'll have a look at one more poem before we move on to Frankenstein. Fear no more the heat of the sun, nor the furious winter's rages. Thou thy worldly task have done, home art gone and taken thy wages. Golden lads and girls all must, as chimney sweepers come to dust. Fear no more the frown o' the great, thou art past the tyrant's stroke. Care no more to cloth and eat, to thee the reed is as the oak. The sceptre learning physic must, or follow this and come to dust. Fear no more the lightning flash, nor the all-dreaded thunderstone. Fear not slander, censure rash, thou hast finished joy and moan. All lovers young, all lovers must, consign to thee and come to dust. No exorciser harm thee, nor no witchcraft charm thee. Ghost unlaid forbear thee, nothing ill come near thee. Quiet consummation have, and renowned be thy grave. So, that concludes the Shakespeare in this anthology. And we will finish off with a poem by Percy Bysshe Shelley, which I'm probably mispronouncing. Song from Prometheus Unbound. As usual, we will have a quick look at the poet, so that we have some context for what we're about to read. Percy Bysshe Shelley was one of the major English Romantic poets, a radical in his poetry as well as in his political and social views. Shelley did not achieve fame during his lifetime, but recognition of his achievements in poetry grew steadily following his death and became an important influence on subsequent generations of poets, including Robert Browning, Algernon Charles Swinburne, Thomas Hardy, and W.B. Yeats. American literary critic Harold Bloom describes him as a superb craftsman, a lyric poet without rival, and surely one of the most advanced, skeptical intellects ever to write a poem. Yes, I would say Recognition of his achievements in poetry grew steadily following his death. Seems to be a bit of a recurring theme. There's quite a few poets we've looked at so far where that seems to have been the case. Shelley's critical reputation fluctuated during the 20th century, but in recent decades he has achieved increasing critical acclaim for the sweeping momentum of his poetic imagery, his mastery of genres and verse forms, and the complex interplay of sceptical idealist and materialist ideas in his work. Among his best-known works are Ozymandias, Ode to the West Wind, To a Skylark, and the political ballad The Mask of Anarchy. His other major works include the verse drama The Cenci and long poems such as Alastor or the Spirit of Solitude, Julian Medallo, Adonis, Prometheus Unbound, widely considered his masterpiece, Hellas, and his final unfinished work, The Triumph of Life. Shelley also wrote prose fiction and a quantity of essays on political, social and philosophical issues. Much of his poetry and prose was not published in his lifetime or only published in expurgated form due to the risk of prosecution for political and religious libel. From the 1820s, his poems and political and ethical writings became popular in Owenist, Chartist and radical political circles and later drew admirers as diverse as Karl Marx, Mahatma Gandhi and George Bernard Shaw. Shelley's life was marked by family crisis, ill health and a backlash against his atheism, political views and defiance of social conventions. He went into permanent self-exile in Italy in 1818 and over the next 4 years produced what Leader and O'Neill call some of the finest poetry of the romantic period. His second wife, Mary Shelley, was the author of Frankenstein. He died in a boating accident in 1822 at the age of 29. So yes, that's who he was. So, song from Prometheus Unbound. On a poet's lips I slept, dreaming like a love adept. In the sound his breathing kept, nor seeks nor finds the mortal blisses, but feeds on the aerial kisses of shapes that haunt fought wildernesses. He will watch from dawn to gloom, the lake-reflected sun illume, the yellow bees in the ivy bloom, nor heed nor see what things they be, but from these create he can forms more real than living man, nurslings of immortality. One of these awakened me, and I spied to succour thee. And I sped to succour thee. I believe the meaning of the poem is it's a rather imaginative description of the poetic writing process, in particular the way that dreams can influence it. I don't think there are any words there that needed looking up. If there are any words anyone in chat would like me to look up, please leave a comment and I will do so shortly. Again, I'm not much help with the structure. The first two verses seem to be trochaic tetrameter with the final syllable docked. Then it becomes a bit more irregular. Anyway, we can have... I may actually have a closer examination of that poem next week, contrary to convention. Usually we only briefly look at the poem we left off on last week. But what I did want to do was get to Percy Shelley's writing today, because last week we finished Pride and Prejudice, and this week we are starting Frankenstein. And Frankenstein was written by Percy Shelley's wife, Mary Shelley, which is just a funny little coincidence that we happen to have been approaching her husband's poetry in the anthology around the same time that we move on. I've chosen this as the next novel as a result of one of our viewers' suggestions. Last week it was Sigourn who suggested it, and Sigourn pointed out that it's getting to autumn and Halloween's not that far away, especially given how long it takes to read through a novel, and so Frankenstein might be a good novel to start on around now, especially or in particular it's obviously old enough that it's in the public domain, and it is a very well regarded work. So that's why I've picked on Frankenstein as our next novel. So I will begin. Introduction. The publishers of the standard novels, in selecting Frankenstein for one of their series, expressed a wish that I should furnish them with some account of the origin of the story. I am the more willing to comply because I shall thus give a general answer to the question so very frequently asked me, how I, when a young girl, came to think of, and to dilate upon, so very hideous an idea. Dilate? That's interesting. I don't think I've heard the word dilate used in that sense. To speak largely and copiously, to dwell in narration, to enlarge with on or upon. That makes sense. It is true that I am very averse to bringing myself forward in print, but as my account will only appear as an appendage to a former production, and as it will be confined to such topics as have connection with my authorship alone, I can scarcely accuse myself of a personal intrusion. I could be misinterpreting this, but I believe the culture at the time, which I think was the early 1800s, yes, it would have been, looking at Percy Shelley's birth and death. And indeed Mary Shelley's. I believe the culture at the time was that you weren't supposed to seek fame through authorship. I think it was a time when people would have heavily used pseudonyms. And that may have been just as much to protect themselves as well. Just as today people can be very careful about anonymity in certain contexts. So when she says I can scarcely accuse myself of a personal intrusion, that's what I think she's getting at. I think she's suggesting that she can discuss this topic without without doing so in a way which compromises her, either in terms of committing a social faux pas or in terms of causing herself trouble. Could be wrong, that's just my guess. It is not a singular that, as the daughter of two persons of distinguished literary celebrity, I should very early in life have thought of writing. As a child I scribbled, and my favourite pastime during the hours given me for recreation was to write stories. Still I had a dearer pleasure than this, which was the formation of castles in the air, the indulging in waking dreams, the following up trains of thought, which had for their subject the formation of a succession of imaginary incidents. My dreams were at once more fantastic and agreeable than my writings. In the latter I was a close imitator, rather doing as others had done, than putting down the suggestions of my own mind. What I wrote was intended at least for one other eye, my childhood's companion and friend, but my dreams were all my own. I accounted for them to nobody, but they were my refuge when annoyed, my dearest pleasure when free. I lived principally in the country as a girl, and passed a considerable time in Scotland. I lived principally in the country as a girl, so not in London, and passed a considerable time in Scotland. I made occasional visits to more picturesque parts, but my habitual residence was on the blank and dreary northern shores of the Tay, near Dundee. I should point out, picturesque actually refers to a specific standard of beauty that was developed in Georgian times, as opposed to being just a general reference to beauty. In fact, the picturesque and the beautiful were considered two separate things, interrelated but separate. Blank and dreary on retrospection I called them. They were not so to me then. They were the eyrie of freedom. Eyrie. Alternative spelling of eyrie. The nest of a bird of prey. Any high, remote but commanding place. Interesting. They were the eyrie of freedom and the pleasant region where unheeded I could commune with the creatures of my fancy. I wrote then, but in a most commonplace style. It was beneath the trees of the grounds belonging to our house, or on the bleak side of the woodless mountain near, that my true compositions, the airy flights of my imagination, were born and fostered. I did not make myself the heroine of my tales. Life appeared to me too commonplace an affair as regarded myself. I could not figure to myself that romantic woes or wonderful events would ever be my lot, but I was not confined to my own identity, and I could people the hours with creations far more interesting to me at that age than my own sensations. After this my life became busier, and reality stood in place of fiction. My husband, however, was from the first very anxious that I should prove myself worthy of my parentage, and enrol myself on the page of fame. He was forever inciting me to obtain literary reputation, which even on my own part I cared for then, though since I have become infinitely indifferent to it. At this time he desired that I should write, not so much with the idea that I could produce anything worthy of notice, but that he might himself judge how far I possessed the promise of better things hereafter. Still, I did nothing. Travelling and the cares of a family occupied my time, and study, in the way of reading or improving my ideas and communication with his far more cultivated mind, was all of literary employment that engaged my attention. So, was all of literary employment that engaged... Yes, that... I wonder if that... I feel like that should read, was all of the literary employment that engaged my attention. But still, moving on. In the summer of 1816 we visited Switzerland and became the neighbours of Lord Byron. At first we spent our pleasant hours on the lake, or wandering on its shores, and Lord Byron, who was writing the third canto of Childe Harold? I'm not sure. Was the only one among us who put his thoughts upon paper. These, as he brought them successively to us, clothed in the light and harmony of poetry, seemed to stamp as divine the glories of heaven and earth, whose influences we partook with him. But it proved a wet, ungenial summer. An incessant rain often confined us for days to the house. Some volumes of ghost stories, translated from the German into French, fell into our hands. There was the history of the inconstant lover who, when he thought to clasp the bride to whom he had pledged his vows, found himself in the arms of the pale ghost of whom he had deserted. There was the tale of the sinful founder of his race, whose miserable doom it was to bestow the kiss of death on all the younger sons of his fated house, just when they reached the age of promise. His gigantic shadowy form, clothed like the ghost in Hamlet, in complete armour, but with the bever up, was seen at midnight by the moon's fitful beams to advance slowly along the gloomy avenue. Yes, bever is part of the helmet. The shape was lost beneath the shadow of the castle walls, but soon a gate swung back, a step was heard, the door of the chamber opened, and he advanced to the couch of the blooming youth, cradled in heavy sleep. Eternal sorrow sat upon his face as he bent down and kissed the forehead of the boys, who from that hour withered like flowers snapped upon the stalk. I have not seen these stories since then, but their incidents are as fresh in my mind as if I had read them yesterday. We will each write a ghost story, said Lord Byron, and his proposition was acceded to. There were 4 of us. The noble author began a tale, a fragment of which he printed at the end of his poem of Mazeppa. Shelley more... Okay, so there isn't any anonymity here. Interesting. So perhaps I was about to say perhaps I was wrong about the whole anonymity thing in the early 1800s, but then I know there are authors that did go in for pseudonyms in a big way. Perhaps it's more of a personal decision like it is today. Shelley, more apt to embody ideas and sentiments in the radiance of brilliant imagery, and in the music of the most melodious verse that adorns our language, than to invent the machinery of a story, commenced one founded on the experiences of his early life. Poor Polidori had some terrible idea about a skull-headed lady who was so punished for peeping through a keyhole. What to see I forget. Something very shocking and wrong, of course. But when she was reduced to a worse condition than the renowned Tom of Coventry, he did not know what to do with her, and was obliged to dispatch her to the tomb of the Capulets, the only place for which she was fitted. The illustrious poets also, annoyed by the platitude of prose, speedily relinquished their uncongenial task. Huh. Interesting. So who's Tom of Coventry? Yeah, I can't find a reference to it. Oh wait. Yep, can't find a reference to it. Could look harder, but I don't think there's much point. I busied myself to think of a story to rival those which had excited us to this task, one which would speak to the mysterious fears of our nature and awaken thrilling horror, one to make the reader dread to look round, and to curdle the blood and quicken the beating of the heart. If I did not accomplish these things, my ghost story would be unworthy of its name. I thought and pondered vainly. I felt that blank incapability of invention which is the greatest misery of authorship. When dull nothing replies to our anxious invocations, "Have you thought of a story?" I was asked each morning, and each morning I was forced to reply with a mortifying negative. Everything must have a beginning. To speaking Sanchian phrase, I don't know what Sanchian phrase is. Doesn't seem to be an entry for Sanchian on Wiktionary, and because it's got a capital first letter, I assume that's named after a person. The Hindus give the world an elephant to support it, but they make the elephant stand upon a tortoise. Invention, it must be humbly admitted, does not consist in creating out of void, but out of chaos. The materials must, in the first place, be afforded. It can give form to dark, shapeless substances, but cannot bring into being the substance itself. In all matters of discovery and invention, even of those that appertain to the imagination, we are continually reminded of the story of Columbus and his egg. Invention consists in the capacity of seizing on the capabilities of a subject and in the power of moulding and fashioning ideas suggested to it. Okay, this is a reference that Wikipedia has. An egg of Columbus, or Columbus egg, refers to a brilliant idea or discovery that seems simple or easy after the fact. The expression refers to an apocryphal story dating from at least the 16th century, in which it is said that Christopher Columbus, having been told that finding a new trade route was inevitable and no great accomplishment, challenges his critics to make an egg stand on its tip. After his challengers give up, Columbus did it himself by chapping the egg on the table to flatten its tip. The story is often alluded to when discussing creativity. The term has also been used as the trade name of a tangram puzzle and several mechanical puzzles. It also shows that anything can be done by anyone with the right set of skills. However, not everyone knows how to do it. Many and long were the conversations between Lord Byron and Shelley, to which I was a devout but nearly silent listener. During one of these, various philosophical doctrines were discussed, and among others the nature of the principle of life, and whether there was any probability of its ever being discovered and communicated. They talked of the experiments of Dr. Darwin. I speak not of what the doctor really did, or said that he did, but, as more to my purpose, of what was then spoken of as having been done by him, who preserved a piece of vermicelli in a glass case, till by some extraordinary means it began to move with voluntary motion. Not thus, after all, would life be given. Perhaps a corpse would be reanimated. Galvanism had given tokens of such things. Perhaps the component parts of a creature might be manufactured, brought together, and endued with vital warmth. What do they mean by galvanism? Is this a reference to some of the early discoverers of electricity? Galvanism is a term invented by the late 18th century physicist and chemist Alessandro Volta to refer to the generation of electric current by chemical action. The term also came to refer to the discoveries of its namesake, Luigi Galvani, specifically the generation of electric current within biological organisms and the contraction and convulsion of biological muscle tissue upon contact with electric current. While Volta theorized and later demonstrated the phenomenon of his galvanism to be replicable with otherwise inert materials, Galvani thought his discovery to be a confirmation of the existence of animal electricity, a vital force which gave life to organic matter. Night waned upon this talk, and even the witching hour had gone by before we retired to rest. When I placed my head on my pillow, I did not sleep, nor could I be said to think. My imagination, unbidden, possessed and guided me, gifting the successive images that arose in my mind with a vividness far beyond the usual bounds of reverie. I saw with shut eyes, but acute mental vision. I saw the pale student of unhallowed art kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out, and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life and stir with an uneasy, half-vital motion. Frightful must it be, for supremely frightful would be the effect of any human endeavour to mock the stupendous mechanism of the creator of the world. His success would terrify the artist. He would rush away from his odious handiwork, horror-stricken. He would hope that, left to itself, the slight spark of life which had communicated would fade, that this thing which had received such imperfect animation would subside into dead matter, and he might sleep in the belief that the silence of the grave would quench forever the transient existence of the hideous corpse which he had looked upon as the cradle of life. He sleeps, but he is awakened. He opens his eyes, beholds the horrid thing, stands at his bedside, opening his curtains and looking on him with yellow, watery, but speculative eyes. I opened mine in terror. The idea so possessed my mind that a thrill of fear ran through me, and I wished to exchange the ghastly image of my fancy for the realities around. I see them still, the very room, the dark parquet, the closed shutters with the moonlight struggling through, and the sense I had that the glassy lake and white high Alps were beyond. Parquet, which I'm probably mispronouncing. What's it? Parker, I think. I think that's Parker. A wooden floor made of parquetry. Okay. Well, what was I? I could not so easily get rid of my hideous phantom, still it haunted me. I must try to think of something else. I recurred to my ghost story, my tiresome unlucky ghost story. Oh, if I could only contrive one which would frighten my readers. I myself had been frightened that night. Swift as light, and as cheering was the idea that broke upon me. I have found it. What terrifies me will terrify others. I need only describe the spectre which had haunted my midnight pillow. On the morrow I announced that I had thought of a story. I began that day with the words, "It was on a dreary night of November," making only a transcript of the grim terrors of my waking dream. At first I thought but a few pages, of a short tale, but Shelley urged me to develop the idea at greater length. I certainly did not owe the suggestion of one incident, nor scarcely of one train of feeling, to my husband. And yet but for his incitement, it would never have taken the form in which it was presented to the world. From this declaration I must accept the preface. As far as I can recollect, it was entirely written by him. And now, once again, I bid my hideous progeny go forth and prosper. I have an affection for it was the offspring of happy days, when death and grief were but words, which found no true echo in my heart. Its several pages speak of many a walk, many a drive, and many a conversation, when I was not alone, and my companion was one who, in this world, I shall never see more. But this is for myself. My readers have nothing to do with these associations. I will add but one word as to the alterations I have made. They are principally those of style. I have changed no portion of the story, nor introduced any new ideas or circumstances. I have mended the language where it was so bald as to interfere with the interest of the narrative, and these changes occur almost exclusively in the beginning of the first volume. Throughout they are entirely confined to such parts as are mere adjuncts to the story, leaving the core and substance of it untouched. So this was in London, 1831. I think, when was it that her husband passed on? Was that 1818, maybe? 1822. July 1822, so this would have been 9 years later. The event on which this fiction is founded has been supposed by Dr. Darwin and some of the physiological writers of Germany as not of impossible occurrence. I shall not be supposed as according the remotest degree of serious faith to such an imagination. Yet, in assuming it as the basis of a work of fancy, I have not considered myself as merely weaving a series of supernatural terrors. The event on which the interest of the story depends is exempt from the disadvantages of a mere tale of spectres or enchantment. It was recommended by the novelty of the situations which it develops, and however impossible as a physical fact, affords a point of view to the imagination for the delineating of human passions more comprehensive and commanding than any which the ordinary relations of existing events can yield. I have thus endeavoured to preserve the truth of the elementary principles of human nature, which I have not scrupled to innovate upon their combinations. The Iliad, the tragic poetry of Greece, Shakespeare in The Tempest, and Midsummer Night's Dream, and most especially Milton in Paradise Lost, conform to this rule, and the most humble novelist who seeks to confer or receive amusement from his labours may, without presumption, aptly to prose fiction a license, or rather a rule, from the adoption of which so many exquisite combinations of human feelings have resulted in the highest specimens of poetry. The circumstance on which my stories rest was suggested in casual conversation. It was commenced partly as a source of amusement and partly as an expedient for exercising any untried resources of mind. Other motives were mingled with these as the work proceeded. I am by no means indifferent to the manner in which whatever moral tendencies exist in the sentiments or characters it contains shall affect the reader. Yet my chief concern in this respect has been limited to the avoiding the enervating effects of the novels of the present day, and to the expedition of the amiableness of domestic affection, and the excellence of universal virtue. The opinions which naturally spring from the character and situation of the hero are by no means to be conceived as existing always in my own conviction, nor is any inference justly to be drawn from the following pages as prejudicing any philosophical doctrine of whatever kind. It is a subject also of additional interest to the author that this story was begun in the majestic region where the scene is principally laid, and in society which cannot cease to be regretted. I passed the summer of 1816 in the environs of Geneva. The season was cold and rainy, and in the evenings we crowded around a blazing wood fire and occasionally amused ourselves with some German stories of ghosts, which happened to fall into our hands. These tales excited in us a playful desire of imitation. Two other friends, a tale from the pen of one of whom would be far more acceptable to the public than anything I could ever hope to produce, and myself agreed to write each story founded on some supernatural occurrence. The weather, however, suddenly became serene. My two friends left me on a journey among the Alps, and lost in the magnificent scenes which they present, all memory of their ghostly visions. The following tale is the only one which has been completed. To William Godwin, author of Political Justice, Caleb Williams, etc. The volume is respectfully inscribed by the author. Did I request thee, Maker, from my clay, to mould me man? Did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me? To Mrs. Saville, England, St. Petersburg, December 11th, 17th, dash. So presumably that's supposed to be in the 1700s, but not giving the precise date, I would guess. You will rejoice to hear that no disaster has accompanied the commencement of an enterprise which you have regarded with such evil forebodings. I arrived here yesterday, and my first task is to assure my dear sister of my welfare and increasing confidence in the success of my undertaking. I am already far north of London, and as I walk in the streets of Petersburg, I feel a cold northern breeze play upon my cheeks, which braces my nerves and fills me with delight. Do you understand this feeling? This breeze, which has travelled from the regions towards which I am advancing, gives me a foretaste of those icy climes. Inspired by this wind of promise, my daydreams become more fervent and vivid. I try in vain to be persuaded that the pole is a seat of frost and desolation. It ever presents itself to my imagination as a region of beauty and delight. There, Margaret, the sun is forever visible, its broad disk just skirting the horizon and diffusing perpetual splendour. There, for with your leave, my sister, I will put some trust in preceding navigators. There snow and frost are banished, and sailing over a calm sea we may be wafted to a land surpassing in wonders and in beauty every region hitherto discovered on the habitable globe. Its productions and features may be without example, as the phenomena of the heavenly bodies undoubtedly are in those undiscovered solitudes. What may not be expected in a country of eternal light? I may there discover the wondrous power which attracts the needle, and may regulate 1,000 celestial observations that require only this voyage to render their seemingly eccentricities consistent forever. I shall satiate my ardent curiosity with the sight of a part of the world never before visited, and may tread a land never before imprinted by the foot of man. These are my enticements, and they are sufficient to conquer all fear of danger or death, to induce me to commence this laborious voyage with the joy a child feels when he embarks in a little boat with his holiday mates on an expedition of discovery up his native river. But supposing all these conjectures to be false, you cannot contest the inestimable benefit which I shall confer on all mankind to the last generation by discovering a passage near the pole to those countries, to reach which at present so many months are requisite, or by ascertaining the secret of the magnet which, if at all possible, can only be effected by undertaking such as mine. These reflections have dispelled the agitation with which I began my letter, and I feel my heart glow with an enthusiasm which elevates me to heaven, for nothing contributes so much to tranquillize the mind as a steady purpose, a point on which the soul may fix its intellectual eye. This expedition has been the favourite dream of my early years. I have read with ardour the accounts of the various voyages which have been made in the prospect of arriving at the North Pacific Ocean through the seas which surround the pole. You will remember that a history of all the voyages made for purposes of discovery composed the whole of our good Uncle Thomas's library. My education was neglected, yet I was passionately fond of reading. These volumes were my study day and night, and my familiarity with them increased the regret which I had felt as a child on learning that my father's dying injunction had forbidden my uncle to allow me to embark in a seafaring life. These visions faded when I perused, for the first time, those poets whose effusions entranced my soul and lifted it to heaven. I also became a poet, and for 1 year lived in a paradise of my own creation. I imagined that I also might obtain a niche in the temple where the names of Homer and Shakespeare are consecrated. You are well acquainted with my failure, and how heavily I bore the disappointment. But just at that time I inherited the fortune of my cousin, and my thoughts were turned into the channel of the earlier bent. 6 years have passed since I resolved on my present undertaking. I can, even now, remember the hour from which I dedicated myself to this great enterprise. I commenced by inuring my body to hardship. I accompanied the whale fishers on several expeditions to the North Sea. I voluntarily endured cold, famine, thirst, and want of sleep. I often worked harder than the common sailors during the day, and devoted my nights to the study of mathematics, a theory of medicine, and those branches of physical science from which a naval adventurer might derive the greatest practical advantage. Twice I actually hired myself as an undermate in a Greenland whaler, and acquitted myself to admiration. I must own I felt a little pride when my captain offered me the second dignity in the vessel, and entreated me to remain with the greatest earnestness, so valuable did he consider my services. And now, dear Margaret, do I not deserve to accomplish some great purpose? My life might have been passed in ease and luxury, but I prefer glory to every enticement that wealth placed in my path. Oh, that some encouraging voice would answer in the affirmative. My courage and my resolution is firm, but my hopes fluctuate, and my spirits are often depressed. I am about to proceed on a long and difficult voyage, the emergencies of which will demand all my fortitude. I am required not only to raise the spirits of others, but sometimes to sustain myself. Then theirs are full, when theirs are failing. This is the most favourable period for travelling in Russia. They fly quickly over the snow in their sledges. The motion is pleasant, and in my opinion far more agreeable than that of an English stagecoach. The cold is not excessive if you are wrapped in furs, a dress which I have already adopted, for there is a great difference between walking the deck and remaining seated motionless for hours, when no exercise prevents the blood from actually freezing in your veins. I have no ambition to lose my life on the post road between St. Petersburg and Archangel. I shall depart for the latter town in a fortnight or 3 weeks, and my intention is to hire a ship there, which can easily be done by paying the insurance for the owner, and to engage as many sailors as I think necessary among those who are accustomed to the whale fishing. I do not intend to sail until the month of June. And when shall I return? Ah, dear sister, how can I answer this question? If I succeed, many months, perhaps years, will pass before you and I may meet. If I fail, you will see me again soon, or never. Farewell, my dear, excellent Margaret. Heaven showered down blessings on you, and save me, that I may again and again justify my gratitude for all your love and kindness. Your affectionate brother, R. Walton. To Mrs. Saville, England, Archangel, the 28th of March, 17 something or other. So we can assume this is presumably the following year. So this is about 3 months later. Is that right? Slightly more. About 3.5 months later. How slowly the time passes here, encompassed as I am by frost and snow. Yet a second step is taken towards my enterprise. I've hired a vessel, and am occupied in collecting my sailors. Those whom I have already engaged appear to be men on whom I can depend, and are certainly possessed of dauntless courage. But I have one want which I have never yet been able to satisfy, and the absence of the object of which I now feel is a most severe evil. I have no friend, Margaret. When I am glowing with the enthusiasm of success, there will be none to participate my joy. If I am assailed by disappointment, no one will endeavour to sustain me in dejection. I shall commit my thoughts to paper, it is true, but that is a poor medium for the communication of feeling. I desire the company of a man who could sympathise with me, whose eyes would reply to mine. You may deem me romantic, my dear sister, but I bitterly feel the want of a friend. I have no one near me, gentle yet courageous, possessed of a cultivated as well as a capacious mind. Capacious. Does that mean having a large capacity? Yes, it does. Whose tastes are like my own, to approve or amend my plans. How would such a friend repair the faults of your poor brother? I am too ardent in execution and too impatient of difficulties. Ardent in execution. Doesn't ardent mean passionate? Full of ardour, expressing passion, spirit or enthusiasm. It does indeed. But it is still a greater evil to me that I am self-educated. For the first 14 years of my life I ran wild on a common, and read nothing but our Uncle Thomas's books of voyages. At that age I became acquainted with the celebrated poets of our own country, but it was only when it had ceased to be in my power to derive its most important benefits from such a conviction that I perceived the necessity of becoming acquainted with more languages than that of my native country. I'm not sure I followed that, but it was only when it had ceased to be in my power to derive its most important benefits from such a conviction. A conviction of what? And whose benefits? Or what's benefits? Now I am 28 and am in reality more illiterate than many schoolboys of 15. It is true that I have thought more and that my daydreams are more extended and magnificent, but they want, as the painters call it, keeping. I'm not familiar with that. Conformity or harmony. The songs are new, but in keeping with tradition. Oh, I see. And I greatly need a friend who would have sense enough not to despise me as romantic, and affection enough for me to endeavour to regulate my mind. Well, these are useless complaints. I shall certainly find no friend on the wide ocean, nor even here an archangel, among merchants and seamen, yet some feelings, unallied to the dross of human nature, beat even in those rugged bosoms. My lieutenant, for instance, is a man of wonderful courage and enterprise. He is madly desirous of glory, or rather, to word my phrase more characteristically, of advancement in his profession. He is an Englishman, and in the midst of national and professional prejudices, unsoftened by cultivation, retains some of the noblest endowments of humanity. I first became acquainted with him on board a whale vessel. Finding that he was unemployed in this city, I easily engaged him to assist in my enterprise. The master is a person of an excellent disposition, and is remarkable in the ship for his gentleness and mildness of his discipline. This circumstance, added to his well-known integrity and dauntless courage, made me very desirous to engage him. A youth passed in solitude, my best years spent under your gentle and feminine fosterage, has so refined the groundwork of my character that I cannot overcome an intense distaste to the usual brutality exercised on board ship. I have never believed it to be necessary, and when I heard of a mariner equally noted for his kindliness of heart and the respect and obedience paid to him by his crew, I felt myself peculiarly fortunate in being able to secure his services. I heard of him first in a rather romantic manner from a lady who owes to him the happiness of her life. This, briefly, is his story. Some years ago he loved a young Russian lady of moderate fortune, and having amassed a considerable sum in prize money, the father of the girl consented to the match. He saw his mistress once before the destined ceremony, but she was bathed in tears and, throwing herself at his feet, entreated him to spare her, confessing at the time that she loved another, but that he was poor and that her father would never consent to the union. My generous friend reassured the suppliant. Shouldn't that be supplicant? Nope, suppliant. Doublet of supplicant. Yeah. My generous friend reassured the suppliant, and on being informed of the name of her lover, instantly abandoned his pursuit. He had already bought a farm with his money, on which he had designed to pass the remainder of his life, but he bestowed the whole on his rival, together with the remains of his prize money to purchase stock, and then himself solicited the young lady's father to consent to her marriage with her lover. The old man decidedly refused, thinking himself bound in honour to my friend, who, when he found the father inexorable, quitted his country, nor returned until he heard that his former mistress was married according to her inclinations. What a noble fellow, you will exclaim. He is so, but then he is wholly uneducated. He is as silent as a Turk, and a kind of ignorant carelessness attends him, which, while it renders his conduct the more astonishing, detracts from the interest and sympathy which otherwise he would command. Interesting that he describes him as his friend, but also previously been complaining of having no friends, although he has pointed out what he sees as some shortcomings. It would seem that he does still regard him as a friend. Yet do not suppose, because I complain a little, or because I can conceive a consolation for my tours, which I may never know, that I am wavering my resolutions. Those are as fixed as fate, and my voyage is only now delayed until the weather shall permit my embarkation. The winter has been dreadfully severe, but the spring promises well, and it is considered as remarkably early season, so that perhaps I may sail sooner than I expected. I shall do nothing rashly. You know me sufficiently to confide in my prudence and considerateness whenever the safety of others is committed to my care. I cannot describe to you my sensations on the near prospect of my undertaking it. It is impossible to communicate to you a conception of the trembling sensation, half pleasurable and half fearful, with which I am preparing to depart. I am going to unexplored regions, to the land of mist and snow, but I shall kill no albatross. Therefore do not be alarmed for my safety, or if I should come back to you as worn and woeful as the ancient mariner, you will smile at my illusion. But I will disclose a secret. I have often attributed my attachment to, my passionate enthusiasm for, the dangerous mysteries of ocean to that production of the most imaginative of modern poets. There is something at work in my soul which I do not understand. I am practically industrious, painstaking, a workman to execute with perseverance and labour, but besides this there is a love for the marvellous, a belief in the marvellous, entwined in all my projects, which hurries me out of the common pathways of man, even to the wild sea and unvisited regions I am about to explore. But to return to dearer considerations, shall I meet you again, after having traversed immense seas and returned by the most southern cape of Africa or America? I dare not expect such success, yet I cannot bear to look on the reverse of the picture. Continue for the present to write to me by every opportunity. I may receive your letters on some occasions when I need them most to support my spirits. I love you very tenderly. Remember me with affection, should you never hear from me again. Your affectionate brother, Robert Walton. Right, I think that concludes the novel section of today's stream. Let us move on to the riddles. Now, I believe the last riddle we left off on last week was number 93. In a big room in a room big enough to work or to play, a carpet was spread over a parcel of hay, and of neat country dancers 12 couple went on it. Now perhaps you expect both a jig and a sonnet, but alas, among these there was none to be seen that could whistle Mole Musk or the sweet Indian Queen. Near these a great group of smart lads in their natures stood like so many posts or indifferent spectators, and no wonder that none of them joined in the jig, for it seems they were every one tied by the leg, and no wonder that none of the former could sing, for they every one danced with their neck in a string. I don't remember what the solution to that one was, but I do remember it being confusing. Ooh, went too far. A lace cushion. So yeah, I think there's some important context there that I just don't have. Anyway, on to today's riddles. So, 94. An ingenious workman once made a spit, 500 turkeys were roasted on it, all well roasted, and all at one time, all very fat and just in their prime. But here comes the wonder, for what do you think? All our roast meat at once was turned into drink. Interesting that it's referring to turkeys. Because there's a New World bird. I didn't think there would have been much turkey consumed in England. Fairly certain this book was published in England. Let's very briefly have a look. Yep. So that's interesting. I don't know. I don't think this is one I'm gonna get, so I will look it up. Turkey coffee. Yes, I had a feeling it would be something I'd never heard of. I can't find any reference to turkey coffee. They could mean Turkish coffee. An ingenious workman once made a spit. 500 turkeys were roasted on it. All were roasted and all at one time, all very fat and just in their prime. But here comes the wonder, for what do you think? All our roast meat at once was turned into drink. No, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, you could think maybe the thing that was being roasted was coffee beans, not turkeys the animal. But then Turkish coffee, as far as I'm aware, isn't made out of extra special coffee beans. So it seems unlikely to me that they would use turkey as a noun to refer to a specific type of coffee bean. All our roast meat at once was turned into drink, but you wouldn't describe a roasted bean as meat, would you? I don't know, it just doesn't seem to figure. This may just be a bad one, or maybe there is some historical context that I just don't have, but yeah, I don't think I'd have got that. 'Tis you, fair ladies, I address, sent to adorn your life, and she that first my name can guess shall first be made a wife. From the dark womb of Mother Earth to mortals' aid I come, but ere I can receive my birth, I many shapes assume. Inspired by nature, I am made as active as the roe, and oftentimes with equal speed through flowery lawns I go. When wicked men their wealth consume, and leave their children poor, to me their daughters often come, and increase their store. The women of the wiser kind have never yet refused me, and yet I never once could find that maids of honour used me. The lily hand, the brilliant eye, may charm without my aid. Beauty may prompt the lover's sigh and celebrate the maid. But let the enchanting maid be told, unless I grace her life, she must have wondrous store of gold, or make a wretched wife. Although I never hope for rest, with Christians I go forth, and while they worship towards the east, I prostrate towards the north. If you suspect hypocrisy, or think me insincere, produce a zealot who, like me, can tremble and adhere. "'Tis you, fair ladies, I address, sent to adorn your life, and she that first my name can guess shall first be made a wife. From the dark womb of Mother Earth to mortals' aid I come, but ere I can receive my birth to many shapes assume. Inspired by nature I am made as active as the roe, and oftentimes with equal speed the flowery lawns I go. When wicked men their wealth consume and leave their children poor, to me their daughters often come and increase their store. The women of the wiser kind have never yet refused me, and yet have never once could find that maids of honour used me. The lily hand, the brilliant eye, may charm without my aid. Beauty may prompt the lover's sigh and celebrate the maid. But let the enchanting maid be told, unless I grace her life, she must have wondrous store of gold, or make a wretched wife. Although I hope for rest, with Christmas I go forth, with Christians I go forth, and while they worship towards the east, I prostrate towards the north. If you suspect hypocrisy, or think me insincere, produce the zealot who, like me, can tremble and adhere. I wonder if the solution could be pewter, which is an alloy of, what is it an alloy of? It's an alloy of lead and something else, isn't it? Lead and tin, perhaps? Oh, no lead. Consisting of tin and antimony, copper, bismuth and silver. Oh, and sometimes silver. Copper and antimony and antiquity lead act as hardeners, but lead may be used in lower grades of pewter, imparting a bluish tint. Interesting. So it could include lead, but that's generally considered to be in lower grades of pewter. So, pewter is well known to be very malleable. It can change shape, and it's also traditionally what crockery would have been made from. Is it called crockery if it's made from metal? Crocks are earthenware vessels, especially domestic utensils, collectively. Looks like crocker comes from potter, so no, strictly speaking, it wouldn't be called crockery. But dishes, plates, and so on, tableware, they would have been made from pewter traditionally, unless, because it's a cheap and easily malleable and easily shaped metal, unless you were rich and had silver, or very rich, in which case you may have had gold. Royalty would probably have had gold tableware. 'Tis you, fair ladies, I address, sent to adorn your life. It could mean adorn your life in a, what's the word, metaphorical sense, because they'll be dealing in quite a lot of pewter, or I think very, very cheap jewellery may have been made of pewter as well. Although I'd have thought those people that were poor enough that they had pewter jewellery probably wouldn't have been wealthy enough to own this book. But would probably have been illiterate. Could be wrong though. And she that first by name can guess shall first be made a wife. From the dark womb of Mother Earth to mortal's aid I come, but ere I can receive my birth, I many shapes assume. That's all consistent. Inspired by nature I am made as active as the roe, and oftentimes with equal speed through flowery lawns I go. I don't know what that is a reference to. The only thing I can think of is possibly either gardening tools, or maybe if there was some sport in which they had a pewter ball, because of course there are sports which use metal balls on lawns, like the French game Bull. I don't think that's made out of pewter nowadays, but historically it may have been. That's all I can think. When wicked men their wealth consume and leave their children poor, to me their daughters often come and increase their store. I think that could mean increasing their the amount of tableware they have in stock. Could be wrong. But in particular, that's what you would do that's what the poor would have been using. Pewter tableware. The women of the wiser kind have never yet refused me, and yet I never once could find that maids of honour used me. Again, I'm guessing, but this could be a reference to maids of honour not wearing cheap jewellery. Dunno. The lily hand, the brilliant eye, may charm without my aid. Beauty may prompt the lover's sigh and celebrate the maid. But let the enchanting maid be told, unless I grace her life, she must have wondrous store of gold or make a wretched wife. Again, I'm guessing, but it could be a reference to, if I'm not in her life, either she's so wealthy that she can afford finer metals, or she's a wretched wife because she provides no tableware, I suppose. Although I never hope for rest, with Christians I go forth, and while they worship towards the east, I prostrate towards the north. I'm not 100% sure what that's referring to, but I know, for example, churches used to have lead roofs. So again, I wonder if this could be... I wonder if pewter roofs were a thing. And that... perhaps... but then why would you refer to the whole roof as prostrating towards the north? Only one side of it would be. So I'm not sure, but I'm guessing, but I could believe there's some sort of structure that might point north. Or possibly it could be a weather vane. Although I wouldn't have thought there to use pewter for that. They might have done actually. I don't know. Is there a reason it would make a bad weather vane? I mean, it's a soft metal, but then again, you don't expect a weather vane to take a huge amount of battering. So I don't know. Oh, but that would just show the direction of the wind, wouldn't it? And there's no reason to believe that would be overwhelmingly northerly. So that doesn't figure. A compass needle would point north, but that would be made of iron, because it'd have to be ferromagnetic. If you suspect hypocrisy or think me insincere, Prejudice said that who like me can tremble and adhere. So I may be wrong. I certainly don't have all the answers. But that's my best guess. Let's see. What were we on? 95? Needle. Okay. That must be a needle in multiple senses then. "'Tis you, fair ladies, I address, sent to adorn your life, and she that first my name can guess shall first be made a wife. From dark womb of Mother Earth to mortal's aid I come, but ere I receive my birth I many shapes assume. Inspired by nature I am made, as active as the roe, and oftentimes with equal speed through flowery lawns I go." So that's not literal flowery lawns, that would be embroidered flowers. "When wicked men their wealth consume and leave their children poor, to me their daughters often come and I increase their store, so mending old clothing. The women of the wiser kind have never yet refused me, and yet I never once could find that maids of honour used me. Don't know what that's a reference to. I don't know why maids of honour wouldn't use a needle. "The lily hand, the brilliant eye, may charm without my aid. Beauty may prompt the lover's sigh and celebrate the maid. But let the enchanting maid be told, unless I grace her life, she must have a wondrous store of gold, i.e. be able to afford enough servants to do sewing for her, or make a wretched wife. Although I never hope for rest, with Christians I go forth, and while they worship towards the east, I prostrate towards the north." I assume that must be a compass needle. "If you suspect hypocrisy or think me insincere, produce a zealot who like me can tremble and adhere." Don't know what that's a reference to. But okay, a needle does make more sense than pewter. Final riddle for the stream. Goodness, quite a long one. 96. "When first the world from chaos sprung, and man his great creator sung, through earth's green bosom teemed with fruit, each native appetite to suit. Thou bowed beneath its load the vine, and flowed the bowl with generous wine. Their beauty, harmony, and love declared the system from above. The glorious plan was incomplete, and mortals wanted something yet. I came that something was supplied. I snatched the wreath from cloistered pride, bade knowledge opt her ample store, and waft her sweets from shore to shore." The poet's rudely warbled lay, I tempered with my heavenly ray. From monkish cell fair science drew, and taught mankind whatever she knew. Religion too, divinest maid, had now her real charms displayed, not as by superstitions drawn, with rack and fire, and tear and groan, but mild as mercy in her face, for all the virtuous human race. Nor are my precepts singly told, but multiply 10,000-fold. To every party, sect, and age, I mark what whilom did engage. While, once upon a time, formerly. Whilom. I mark what whilom did engage, the fond pursuits of heroes, kings, of cities sacked, and other things, which never without me would be known, but into drear oblivion thrown. Could this be writing? Or history? When first the world from chaos sprung, and man his great creator sung, through earth's green bosom teemed with fruit, each native appetite to suit, though bowed beneath its load the vine, and flowed the bowl with generous wine, though beauty, harmony, and love declared the system from above, the glorious plan was incomplete, and mortals wanted something yet. I came, that something was supplied, I snatched the wreath from cloistered pride. Not sure what wreath that is. Bade knowledge ope her ample store, and waft her sweets from shore to shore. The poet's rudely warbled lay, I tempered with heavenly ray. From monkish cell fair science drew, and taught mankind whatever she knew. Religion too, divinest maid, had now her real charms displayed, not as by superstition drawn, with rack and fire, and tear and groan, but mildest mercy in her face. Interesting, these references to religion, superstition, and mercy. Interesting in the way that it, in what it implies about people's relationship with religion in Georgian England. For all the virtuous human race, but mildest mercy in her face for all the virtuous human race, nor are my precepts singly told, but multiply 10,000-fold. To every party, sect, and age, I mark what whilom did engage. The fond pursuits of heroes, kings, of cities sacked, and other things, which never without me would be known, but in drear oblivion thrown. I think that's got to be either writing or history. Writing would seem to make more sense because it does refer to science and religion, as well as people's lives. They acknowledge ope her ample store. What is ope? Oh, that's probably a shortening of open. Yes, it is indeed. So, I'm guessing writing? I went too far. Needle. Printing. Well, that's interesting. When first the world from chaos sprung, and man his great creator sung, through earth's green bosom teemed with fruit, each native appetite to suit, though bowed beneath its load the vine, and flowed the bowl with generous wine, though beauty, harmony, and love declared the system from above, the glorious plan was incomplete, and mortals wanted something yet. I came that something was supplied, I snatched the wreath from cloistered pride, bade knowledge open her ample store, and waft her sweets from shore to shore. The poet's rudely warbled lay, I tempered with my heavenly ray, from monkish self her science drew, and taught mankind whatever she knew. Religion too, divinest maid, had now her real charms displayed, not as by superstition drawn, with rack and fire, and tear and groan, but mildest mercy in her face. I think this could be a reference to the the rise of Protestantism, and the fact that everyone could have a Bible printed, or everyone could buy a printed Bible for their own home in their own language, as opposed to relying on most of their religious knowledge coming from superstition. Could be wrong, but mildest mercy in her face for all the virtuous human race. Nor are my precepts singly told, but multiply 10,000-fold. To every party, sect, and age, I mark what whilom did engage, the fond pursuits of heroes, kings, of cities sacked, and other things, which never without me would be known, but into drew oblivion thrown. That's interesting. I feel like writing is a more literal answer, because, for example, we know a great deal about the Romans, and so did they back then. We probably know more now due to a lot more archaeology having been done, and 200 years more study, but they knew a great deal about the Romans, and we do now, and the Romans massively predate printing. So clearly there were written records that survived, lots of written records that survived from Roman times till then. But it is true to say that printing was a big breakthrough. It really did change what was possible. Oh well, 3 riddles and not 1 right. That's the way it goes sometimes. Oh dear, I forgot to update the overlay. Anyway, thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I'll be streaming again on Friday. I need to find a game to fill in 2 streams, Friday and Saturday, before next Monday, in which I intend to be doing the new Monkey Island game, which is supposed to come out that day, Monday the 19th. So my next stream will be Friday. I'll be streaming whatever I'll be streaming. It'll be some sort of video game. Also the Saturday. And then next Monday should be the new Monkey Island game. Next Wednesday will be back to Poetry, Prose and Riddles. Thank you for coming, and I hope you all have a wonderful night. Good night.